Information about the world of running, inspiration to fuel passion and excellence, and ideas for making connections and finding community. You're listening to AtoZrunning. Hi everyone, welcome to the AtoZrunning Podcast and welcome to 2021.
Happy New
Happy
Year!
New Year! We're so glad that you are with us. I'm Andi.
And I'm Zach, and we are here to help runners thrive. And in order to do that in this show, we're breaking into the topic of identity and running, and especially the idea of how we can revitalize running. We know that's a question on many of your minds presently, and so in order to really truly address that well, we brought on a rock star guest, Kendra Chambers, running philosopher,
I like it.
by habit, and professional middle distance runner by trade. So she really gets into it with us, and we asked her to share about things like where we find worth and identity and all of those things as runners, and she gets us to the point of what are the practical things we all need to be thinking about to truly be revitalized in our running. And if you recall from a few weeks ago, and if you don't, go back and listen to it. We broke down some of the things that make thriving difficult from time to time, certainly right now and any other time. And in this conversation with Kendra, I think we do a nice job of really drawing out the very specific things we all should be thinking about in order to be in the best place possible.
Yeah, Kendra does. She
Kendra
brings up
does.
some,
We just
some
nod
great
along
stuff.
and smile.
It was so good. Well, if you don't want to miss this kind of content, make sure that you follow on AtoZrunning.com as well as subscribe wherever it is you like to listen to the AtoZrunning podcast. And we may share some thoughts and questions from some of you. So I reached out and I said, hey, what do you guys want to know on the AtoZrunning podcast? Well, Sarah Bartz, she gave us a great question, and that was, what are 2 post-run practices to implement, if nothing else?
Okay, so we definitely need to do probably an entire episode on these kinds of things. But certainly, what are the 2? All right, if we had to pick some. This comes from Jay Johnson, and you've heard us mention his name because he's one of the known experts in the field of general strength and mobility for runners, and especially in thinking about what are the things that accomplish the greatest benefit for us in the most efficient manner, because we're busy runners and we don't have a ton of time. And so he talks a lot about the importance of addressing some of the kind of the major concerns. So if you have certain areas, especially if you work with like a physical therapist and he's like, your hips are problematic and here's what you need to do about it, those are important things to do. So we always want to keep that in mind. But according to Jay Johnson, the essential factor of neuromuscular activation and full range of mobility after those runs, especially after like a harder run, long runs, and those kinds of things. If you think about it, after the run, you're essentially in your worst running state at the end of a run.
You start breaking down, your weaknesses
that's when
are
you're
showing.
fatiguing, that's when you're breaking down, that's all of those kinds of things. So the best way to end the day, if you will, is to reactivate things appropriately and properly as though you are getting started for the day. And so that's where Jay Johnson's advice comes in. Certainly the neuromuscular activation involving full range of motion types of things. So you're getting a kind of dynamic mobility in that as well.
So I was relieved when I asked Zach, like specifically though, okay?
So what should you do then?
I know these are a lot of great things that I understand in concept, but what do we do practically? So Phil Wharton, who we also had a guest on this podcast, active isolated flexibility is a really great way to do both of those things, activate and get full range of motion. So what I do, I put my foot in a rope and I pull it up to get that hamstring, and then I go the other way to get the quad. And if you are unclear of what those exercises look like, Phil does do them in our podcast with him.
So you can't just listen to that one. You need to watch that one.
Yeah,
and he's demonstrating the entire time.
And I'll also put the best resource. It's completely free. I can't believe he gives it to everyone completely free, but it's an app that you can put in problem areas and it will show you which activated isolated flexibility exercises to do for your specific weak areas. So do a couple of those, and that's what you got to do after you run.
And just remember, it's not as simple as grabbing a rope and just moving your leg around. There's a specific kind of process, and that's what makes it neuromuscular in nature. That's what makes it an active, isolated flexibility routine. So if you're not familiar with that at all, certainly check out Phil Wharton's material, listen to or watch our episode with him from just a while back, and that will help you get started.
Very good.
So speaking of post-run practices and good things, ProTech, we want to talk at least one more time about, because these things are just wonderful. This is the Orb Activate. Whoa.
That's actually in the low setting. You can still hear, you know?
So if you want me to ruin our house by... Okay, so the Orb Activate, naturally, you just guessed if you were watching, or, well, you probably could tell from hearing too, that this is one of those vibrating rollers. It's the spherical kind, and just like any of Orb's products with, it's got the dimples and such, so the trigger point dynamics with the vibration, that kind of thing is profound for sore muscles. And certainly when we talk about some of the neuromuscular factors there too, the added vibration element has been studied as a way to help induce some of those kinds of muscle firings.
Ooh.
So there is potential, and I am not going to, because I haven't seen enough studies that confirm that it really truly accomplishes that, but there is at the very least potential for that with these kinds of devices.
And what they do know is that the vibration does increase your blood flow, which helps you then obviously work out those areas like the fascia or muscles that are bound up. And I'm going to mention it again. I did mention it last week too, but I love the practical nature of the Orb Activate because it is so small that you can put it in your bag. It's a lot easier. It's 4.5 inches and it does connect USB mini. So that's how you power it up. So that's nice because it's pretty universal. And then there's 3 different levels of power. So just very practical. And we do have a coupon code. I don't know if they're still running. They had a really great sale going on, and the code won't work for a sale item. But if you do want some of the regular price items, like we were talking about mobility, this is the stretch band, and it has places that you can put your foot in it and your hand, depending on where you're at. It just gives you more control. So this is a great product that they have.
Classic Orb, of course.
We've worn this one. You can see we've had this one for a long time.
They've got the Orb Extreme. So ProTech has a lot of great resources for this kind of work, and we have a 10% off code available to any of you if you want to use it, and that is AtoZ10. Those are all letters and then the number 1010.
And caps don't matter.
Sure.
So you can take advantage of that great deal. There's a few others too that we have going on at AtoZrunning. So I'll link to a few of those in the show notes associated to this. If you want to look through and see like what you can get on discount, products that we love and use on the regular, you'll find those there.
And let's talk about the world of running.
Last week on the AtoZrunning Podcast, we gave you the highlights of 2020. And there were epic things that went down, world records, national records, all kinds of great things. Now, this week on the AtoZrunning Podcast, we have 2 things for you.
So if you didn't guess, there's not a lot happening at this moment in time in our sport. As many sports take a little bit of a downtime during this period. But there were at least a couple of things. And so we did want to share back in, this would have been December 29th, World Athletics reported that Stuart McSwain of Australia ran a blazing mile time. He ran 350.6 solo, basically solo. He had a pacer for 800 meters. He did essentially win the race. I think it was by 19 seconds. So it wasn't a race. He was just time trialing and running 350, a world leading time. That's not too shabby. They did say something like it was like the 5th best performance for Oceania, perhaps ever, or certainly at that time. Now, that said, we've covered him a bit. This is no surprise to anyone because he did break the 3K national record for Australia back in September, and he already qualified for the Olympic team because Australia holds their team trials in February, which happened before the big shutdown last year. So he did qualify for the team to represent Australia in the Olympics, and unless something major happens, that will stand, and he'll be running in Tokyo. And then, of course, it's just going to be exciting to see how the rest of this upcoming season unfolds for him.
Next, Paul Chalimo. We told you that we would keep you updated on him. He's a previous guest on the A to Z Running Podcast, silver medalist at the Olympics in the 5,000 meters, and he ran a 10K in Madrid.
He did. Now, it's interesting because apparently if you were to check out the Let's Run message boards at some point in time, apparently there was potential for, don't do it. Don't go there. It's a terrible place to be. Potential that he was going for the American Road 10K record. We don't know if that's actually true, but the race itself wasn't even quite fast enough. The winning time wasn't that fast, and he was third. So it's hard to know for sure if he was actually trying to run that pace specifically. But it's also unlikely that you see someone like at this situation running that fast when clearly he's focused on the summer when the Olympic trials will be happening in the United States. And so certainly a quick time. Interesting performance, interesting choice running in Madrid in the very end of December, right before it was on December 31st, so right at the turn of the new year. But we're excited to continue following Paul Chalimo certainly, and where American distance runners begin and kind of launch this 2021 season. Certainly there's not a lot of racing happening yet. The indoor seasons that are usually gearing up right now are still largely on hold, but we are anticipating some fast track stuff coming soon. And we're excited.
Very excited.
As noted, our main topic for this episode will be discussing what helps revive running. And in thinking about that broader topic of thriving as people and how running can be a piece of that. And certainly we want it to be a positive piece of that if you are indeed a runner. But it's more than just the training. And that's where when we talk about reviving our running right now, we can certainly train more and train better and train in different ways, change our training, and things like that can be a part of that solution. And we're going to be addressing a lot of those elements in the coming weeks. However, we wanted to really start this bend in the conversation, specifically talking about, with Kendra, about running as a whole person. And essentially the balance, how we hold and balance things like goals and passions with the rest of our life at large. Mm-hmm. So before we do that, first we do need to tell you a little bit about our guest, Kendra Chambers.
Kendra Chambers is a pro runner for Wazelle. She runs middle distance events predominantly, and she ran for Team USA in a world championship in the 4x8 and also in the 4x4 indoors.
She's a speedy one.
She is a speedy one. And there's a lot I could say about her running and her collegiate and her high school career. This is why we had her on, though. She's very fast, but also because, as Zach said earlier, she is the running philosopher. She said this in her Instagram: to be an athlete, you do what you do for a specific reason. For me, that reason is to consistently become my best, never placing my worth in the world's hands, never placing my worth into my current limitations or past achievements, never allowing myself to believe that I am any less of a person with or without validation, rewards, or results. I do this because I enjoy the process more than the prize.
And if you like what you're getting there, keep listening, because that's basically the entire conversation.
Mm-hmm. Here's Kendra Chambers. Hi, Kendra. Welcome to the A to Z Running Podcast.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're so excited to have you on for so many reasons. And today's topic, especially as we get to know you, we see what kind of athlete you are. And being a pro runner, we just told our audience all about you before we had this conversation. But besides being a pro runner, you also are like balancing life, and you are a real person. And we are so excited to have you on air to talk through this concept of identity and running. It's a big one. I just swallowed. I gulped. It's a big one.
It is.
So I'm just going to start with a heavy question, which is, how does running fit into who you are?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I started out running like everyone else. I started running in middle school, which is actually pretty late compared to other athletes. But I just, I wanted to be with my friends, and they were all joining track. And I come from a family who was into soccer and basketball and other things, but I really didn't know anyone like in my family, immediate family, that ran track. At the time I was, getting into sports. So I just joined because I wanted to hang out with my friends. And the first time I experienced, a relay, I was hooked. I was like, oh my gosh, like I love this, and the baton and being part of a team, and just like knowing that, we could yell for our teammates after they got the baton. And it was just such an amazing feeling that I just had to keep on returning. So I made like the varsity squad, and then I also made varsity soccer. So I was like, I don't know what to do. And when I finally got to high school, the track coach was like, look, if you just leave soccer alone, I promise you we'll go to the state championship. She's like, I see it in you. I know you got it. And ever since then, I've been hooked on running. And for me, it's like, so if I think about myself, I never saw myself being a runner. So when I think about running and how it ties to who I am, it's like, oh my gosh, I've been running since, like what was like 2004? Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy that I'm still doing this. But I honestly have connected what I do as a job, honestly, to the people and relationship I've built. So my identity with running ties strongly with the people that are now in my life because of running. So for me, it's like, yes, I am a runner, but then also like, I just have all these wonderful people that I met at track meets, and I have all these wonderful coaches and mentors, and I have all these wonderful friends that I was handing baton off to and dying after doing repeat 400s and throwing up. Like, we bonded over that. Like, so it's like, I don't know exactly how to say if that's a part of me, but I know the relationships are for sure. And after running for so long, it's like your body changes and your relationship with track and field changes. Middle school, is very different to the Olympic trials in 2016. So for me, it's like totally different. I don't even know if those two are the same as far as running goes. But that for me is definitely one thing that I've, taken into account, are the relationships first, foremost. And then also just knowing that, yes, it's part of my identity, but it's not all that I am. So that's the long answer.
I read somewhere that you did dance as well.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. So I started dance when I was little, like 5 years old. Yeah.
So would you consider yourself to be an expressive person? Like, is running an expression for you?
Absolutely. And, I always thought like, wow, like, I don't know if I'm going to be one of those people who wake up in the morning and be like, let's go for a 10-mile run. Like, I'm not that person, but then I'm also that person who's like, I want to put on some spikes and put on some hardcore music and go do the fastest 200 this world has ever seen. So I've also realized like what kind of runner I am, and it's changed over the years. But yeah, like I love dancing and I love expressing, feelings and emotions through that. But I realized like, oh my gosh, like running is so different. And since I've kind of like the last 5 years transitioned into being like a full-on 800-meter runner, like I finally have fallen in love with the distance. I get it. I love it. I listen to podcasts. I'm all in it now. I'm like, okay, great. I can put on my murder podcast and like go for like an hour run. And I never thought I'd be that runner. So like I said, it's constantly changing, evolving for me. That part of my identity is I just love it. It's just going to be part of me forever, I think.
Well, it does warm my heart, at least just a little bit, that you are growing more fond of some of the distance stuff.
Zach is like full on distance. I'm still getting there. I ran the marathon for the Olympic trials, but that was like only my third marathon. So I'm still getting like the whole marathon thing too.
Yeah,
the distance.
That's another level. That's another level for sure.
They're different kinds of things, right? They're always different kinds of things. I think the greatest pain I've ever been in my life is any time I've ever had to run an 800 meters on the track.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
Different types of pain and mental. It's just, yes, it's very different. Isn't that weird how that works? Like running is just so unique to everyone. I love it. That's a part of running that I actually love.
Mm-hmm.
That's so true. It's so true. And there's elements of, elements of the identity kind of factor, we as runners, if you will, that we share. And you were saying this actually off air, even just there's some common values, and we share these things regardless of whether we're 400-meter runners, ultra marathoners, although ultra marathoners sometimes are a little bit of their own breed, but we were making some jokes with an ultramarathoner recently on the show, and just learning that when you can sit down and talk to someone, you realize very quickly that we're similar people because of this kind of shared passion, this shared interest. And at the same time, there's a lot of personal with the identity and how I see myself as a runner and how that informs the rest of my life, or how the rest of my life informs that. There's a lot there that we're hoping to unpack and continue to unpack a little bit here with you right now, Kendra.
So I guess the first thing would be like your worth and performance. How do you juggle it as a professional athlete where you're looking at these time performances and they help you get places and do things and pursue your career? How do you balance those two things?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. And, it took me, I will be honest with you guys, it took me a long time to get where I am today. And I think when you're new to something, and it doesn't matter what level of life you are constantly being put in as a newbie, as a rookie, as a freshman. There's stages of lives where it's just new and you have to accept that. And for me, when I did, transition out of college and into the elite setting, I was new and I will tell you right now, I was totally putting my worth into running, because that's what the world tells you. The world tells you this: if you run this, you will get paid this on a contract, on, a track and field contract or an agency contract, or there's percentages. It's like 15% and all of these things. They're just completely bombarded in track and field and telling you, like, if you don't make a USA team, then, you're not that good. Or if you don't make, top 8, you're not in the finals. So it's just a constant repetitive slap in your face. You're not good enough. And for me, I wasn't equipped mentally nor physically to really be ready to compete at that level. And it took me some time. Like, my first couple of years, I just struggled. Out of college, and I didn't have a contract. And I was like, man, like, I don't know if I can do this. And I literally went to my first professional coach and I said, I'm just going to give it like a year and, we'll see what happens. And she laughed in my face, because she's like, that's not how this works. And I think over time I realized, okay, I would cry. I think I would cry after, like, I would run pretty good times. Times that were at least like top 15 in the US. I would be so upset because I wanted to be first. I wanted to be the best. And it took me actually a long time and an injury and, all of these things to kind of happen to be like, okay, wait a minute. I am so thankful for those times now that I wish I didn't tear my plantar fasciitis, or I wish, my kidney didn't fail. Like, all of these bad things happen and you realize, wow, like, I really didn't appreciate the moment. And with that, I think I can tie in like how I ended up taking my worth out of my times. And it's all about numbers, numbers at practice, numbers on the track. It's all about numbers. And I was like, I need to divorce myself from numbers and times and expectations. And I'm going to marry into what is the best version of Kendra. And that's it. There's no going back. There's no, this has to be the way my journey has to be, or I'm going to be unhappy. And for me, it's like, do you want a good quality of life? Or do you want to be unhappy and miserable and look back, in 10, 20 years and you tell your grandkids, yeah, I ran at the Olympic trials, but I was always crying. Like, well, I'm not happy. So I had to dig deep and find out, I am doing this so I can be the best Kendra. And if the best Kendra never makes an Olympic team, that has to be okay. And this cannot be because of money, and it cannot be because of a track meet. At the end of the day, it's all a track meet. And so I had to realize that I was worth so much more than that. I'm a woman, I'm human, I'm Black, I'm Hispanic. I love to dance, I love to read, I love to work with student athletes, I love to do administration at universities, and one day I want to be an athletic director. All that fun stuff about Kendra cannot be drowned out and completely shoved in a box because I didn't run under 2 minutes. So I had to level with myself and be like, sweetie, you are enough. you've always been enough, and it took you a long time to get here, but we will never go backwards. We're not going to step backwards. And you just can't let numbers rule your life. And so even on the days where, you know, I'm having a good workout and the next day I go out for a run and it needs to be 7-minute pace and it's actually like 8:45 pace or something, or 9-minute pace or 10-minute pace, my coach is like, cool, that's okay. Like, it's okay. And so I've finally gotten to a point where I have bad meets. Absolutely. I still have bad meets. And I have to walk away saying, all right, that wasn't my best effort, but I'm not going to get upset. That's not going to change my worth. And now I just have more to work on. So, you know, it's just, you got to pull positives from any situation. And the positives for me over, you know, running through my running career has just been making sure that my worth isn't put into the times that I run.
That's so profound.
And a shared experience for runners of all calibers, of all places. Those numbers, it's so easy to fall into that number trap. You know, and you said it early on there, Kendra, that it's kind of, we do it to ourselves in a sense as runners, because, you know, I look at another runner and I say, well, that guy ran 2:15 in the marathon. Like, I don't know anything else about that guy, but he ran 2:15 in the marathon, and that's who he is. But that's not who he is. That's just a number of something that he did. And yet we do that. And so then when I look at myself in the context of running, I start saying things like, well, this is my 5K time. This is my 10K time. I am a 29-minute 10K run, you know, those kinds of things.
Right.
And it's not healthy, because long term that doesn't do us any favors for healthy and thriving lives to just simply look at the numbers.
Exactly. Someone actually told me comparison is the thief of joy. And when you start to compare on Instagram, and oh, look at that meet and look at results. I know how crazy we all are about results. We're crazy. So we literally go immediately to results, look at the meet, look at the splits. It's like, we have to just kind of take a step back sometimes. That's all dandy to do that and stuff, but sometimes you just have to take a step back and be like, okay, maybe, you know, I feel like you never know when your time is coming, and that's the beauty of track and field and running. Like, you just never know. Never bet in a track and field race or marathon. You just never know. It could be your day. And I dig that. I love that. And so I'm always like, okay, they had a good day. Like, my day's coming. Like, I just kind of take that in. But you're absolutely right. Numbers and numbers and numbers. It's like we can get caught up in it.
That resolve that you made to divorce numbers, right? And become the best version of Kendra. Did you feel a change, a shift? Like, how did that affect you when you made that decision?
Absolutely. It was kind of, I can say it wasn't like today's a decision. It definitely happened over time. But like I said before, it was an injury that really humbled me. And, you know, the journey and experience always finds a way to humble people. Like, you cannot escape it. I always say track and field exposes you and also humbles you in so many ways. And so when that I decided that, it kind of happened over time. But I honestly, after I was injured, I was like, completely just heartbroken at the fact that I couldn't run the times that I used to run. And so now I was like, wow, like I really took that for granted. And I think I really was really in a deep depression when I was injured, because like, you're not around your teammates, you're not around your coach. I'm in a pool by myself. I'm like, gosh, this is awful. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, was it more awful than the time you ran and you cried, but you were still like top 15 in the US or top 10? Like, where are we comparing here? And I think going through that definitely helped me like revive my worth as a human being first. And then being like, okay, after that injury and deciding to continue to run is always that groundbreaking moment for an athlete, because you're like, okay, I can just stay here where I am, or I can pick myself up, and this time it's going to be different, because it has to be. There's no way an injury, you know, allows someone to stay the same. It changes you mentally and physically. So, you know, whether that was me adding another 45 minutes to my warm up to make sure I wasn't going to injure another, you know, tendon on my foot, but also spending time with a sports psychiatrist, like, also spending time with my coach and having more real conversations, but also spending time with my family and getting worth and sense and self from them. So all of these things are just a combination of like, okay, something has to change. And so now I have a game plan on how I actually feel happy and my quality of life. Those things are really important to me now, where before it wasn't. It was about the times and the numbers. And now I feel like, okay, I have a better handle on my life and my happiness.
Absolutely. So you were intimating at this just a moment ago, but I'd love to hear further reaction. There was a study published in November of 2020. So as we're airing this episode, it was not that long ago. And the study was covering running and mental health in a survey of just about every study they could find from the year 1970 on. So tons of information there from all of these different studies from all over the world. And they found a really important factor, which was certainly we noticed that running tends to improve mental health for most, if not nearly all people, to a certain degree at the very least. However, they defined the habitual runner, the person who essentially runs regularly as a part of your regular routine and such. The habitual runner, they found when that person cannot run or loses running, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, they see a notable decline in mental health, in just the overall trend, which you were suggesting even in the moment of something like an injury, feeling the depression, feeling the disconnect from the community that you're a part of when you are running and you're healthy and strong and such. React to that, if you will, for us, Kendra, that study and that finding with losing running in that sense.
Absolutely. And, it's that I'm not shocked at all. That sounds about right. I think over my period of training, and I think in college, I noticed that big time. And the student athlete in a collegiate setting that's a whole other dynamic that I don't think we have time for today. But that setting is incredibly frustrating as a student athlete, because there is so much pressure to perform and also to perform in the classroom. And so I'm a big advocate for student athletes, but you're absolutely spot on. I saw depression rampant when injuries happened, and that was friends at Texas that were swimmers, that were on the track team, that were on the football team. I mean, you name it, I could see it in any athlete. It's just when you're taken away from your community, it's like a breakup. It's like a breakup, and you're like trying to cope, like, okay, what do I do now that I don't have this thing that I'm so used to? And I think that, colleges and university, of course, can do a better job of providing support there. And for me, I think as I transitioned into elite, and obviously track and field is an individual sport. Okay, no one's coming to rescue you. So you have to be super proactive about finding your support team. And so especially like the college babies who come and they're like, hello, like, who's going to tell me what to do? And it's like, yeah, no, so this is not how it works. So you have to kind of find your own help and get your own help and, get your own psychiatrist and stuff like that, or counselor or guidance counselor. So it's like, you have to go seek and find those people. And for me, I didn't really think a sports psychologist would help me get through that depression that I was feeling, through the injury and like coming back and just not mentally being there. But it helps so much. And I really do wish that I hope this study might provide, some just insight to like how badly we need those professionals, like on staffs, on Team USA staffs, on at the Olympic trials. I mean, you name it. These are big meets that we're, competing in. And I think when you take that away and, you're going through a bad season or you have an injury, it's so easy to succumb to like bad thoughts and negative things because you miss it. And my sports psychologist is just amazing. Her name is Dr. Julie Warnick, and she works for the Texas Center of Psychology. And she's just been such a crucial person in my life that I, pretty much talk to her on a like bi-weekly basis. And I think it's just something that all athletes should do, actually, and something that's really important to being elite and actively competing, like, year after year after year after year, it's like you kind of need someone to be like, hey, I'm watching from the outside and you're going crazy. So you might need some help. And I think we get so stuck in our bubble that it's nice to just hear and vent and just listen to someone who isn't, in that bubble. And it's honestly been such a pleasure to work with the sports psychologist, and she helps me big time. So I'm really appreciative of that.
Oh, that's awesome. We'll have to link to her in our show notes.
Yes.
So you told us a couple things that keep you grounded. So community and having help.
Yes.
Maybe do you want to expand on help a little bit? Are there other, besides your sports psychologist, what other help do you derive from?
Yes. Oh, I love this question. So I like to brag on my help because my support team is amazing, and I honestly wouldn't be here or anywhere without them. And so basically my family is a really big part of what I do. My mom is like my biggest supporter. Her dreams and my dreams are her dreams. So that is awesome, just having a supportive family. But also so I call them teammates, but teammates I've had over the years, being on the circuit and, running overseas. It's like you meet a lot of athletes, but then during your career, you just find a group. And so I have a group of wonderful friends who run, competitively with me, the same event actually. But we just have like such a good bond. And I think having people who are not only in the sport or the career that you do is good, but also having like healthy relationships, that's big key for me. So my friendships and my girl group are just amazing. I can't speak more highly of them. They send me positive things. They send me Bible verses. It's like there's a track and field Bible study. Like there's you just have to put yourself out there. You know what I mean? And you find naturally and organically, you find friendship groups. And so for me and the 800 women in the USA, that's amazing. They're great people. So I've been blessed to be able to run an event where at any meet in the US, I'm probably really good friends with a couple of people on the line. So that, and just having, healthy conversations and being positive. I think for us, the biggest thing is like, there's no amount of like sunshine that anyone can steal. We want everyone to have sunshine. So if someone is having an amazing day and you're having a really bad day, I'm still going to be really happy for my friend, because that's my friend, And so I think we've been able to kind of take the competitive ugliness out of, being, opponents, and, we compete against each other, but at the same time we have mutual respect. So I would definitely say one of those as well. And then also just thinking of like, self-care. So I know that's like such an overrated term in 2020, but as far as being a runner, I think it's really important to constantly remind yourself of your why. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I getting up to run? Why am I lifting weights? Why am I getting up early? Like, everyone's looking at me crazy on the side of the road as I run my 6 miles. Like, why am I doing this? So for me, I love to read books that just remind me of that. So whether that has to do with my faith or whether that has to do with just other people's trials and tribulations through their career, I'm constantly kind of just focusing on me and my time and how I manage everything. So I would say that would be my next thing, is definitely having help from yourself, making sure that you're okay, making sure you're doing check-ins, making sure you're taking time to do yoga or read a book or not run today. It's okay not to run. So I think having those three or four different support groups are major. But also I have a lot of people like my agents and my coaches who also are a big help. And that's surprising to a lot of people because a lot of people don't have good relationships. Not good relationships, it's just an agent athlete, like it's business. But for me, I feel like I have great relationships where I could call them anytime about a personal issue, even doesn't have to be about track. And then having a good relationship with my coach is also really helpful. I think that she's just a really good mentor, but she also knows me very intimately and understands like, okay, you're having a bad day. We're not going to do this workout. Let's switch it up. And being able to talk to her, like, are you sure we should do this? And some coaches don't like that, and some training groups don't allow for that. So I think having all of these different moving pieces to get Kendra Chambers to run her best is just so crucial, because I don't think without any piece of the pie, it just wouldn't work. So they all contribute something very special, and I take very seriously the relationships I have. So yeah, I'm just blessed to have that team.
You know, in all of these different parts that you've kind of articulated there, Kendra, the theme here is that you are more than just an athlete. And so in terms of self-care, I have to care for myself as a person, not just an athlete. It's not terribly hard for runners to understand how to care for the runner part of myself.
Yeah.
You know, I know I need to do some of these kinds of things, and over the course of the day, it's going to look like this. But how do I also then care for myself, who is the person, not just the runner? And then with even like the coach and agent relationship, you can really get so much more out of those kinds of things when we truly look at each other as people, not just your coach, I'm athlete, or your agent, I'm athlete, you know, that kind of thing. And then even our friends and our teammates and our competition and all of these factors, the experience is so much better when we see each other as people and when we interact with each other as people. And I remember so vividly an experience, it was with my college team. And one of the things that I think made that time for me really positive was because that college team specifically really cared for each other as people really well at the time. And I think one of the things that made that happen was we were just so willing to just be normal people outside of running with each other just as easily as we were athletes with each other. And that's not always the case. As you were mentioning, you know, different programs, different experiences, it's not always easy to accomplish. But when we can get there, it's so much better for all of us, for all of who we are, not just for the sport.
Exactly. That is spot on. You said it perfectly, because a lot of people are so intimidated, and that's okay. Like, understanding that their competition is okay. That's allowed for sure. Like, you should want to win all the time. Absolutely. That's why you step on the line. That's why you do what we do. But at the end of the day, where is where is your why? I keep going back to my why. Like, are you running because you want to beat person A and person B? Is that really your motive here? I think motivation to your why is so important. Like, what is your motivation? And a lot of people, a lot of runners especially, have bitter motivation. The motivation isn't coming from a good place. So you need to take a step back and look at the motivation of why you're doing what you're doing. And for me, I went through that. I was mad at the people who beat me, and it's like, no, like, the motivation needs to come from, hey, you probably didn't do this at the work. You didn't do good enough at the workout, or you should go ask your strength coach for more squats or more abs, or what. There's something with me. It has to be about me. And I think when people start to look out at the lanes and at runners beside you, and you can psych yourself out doing that, first of all, but also, like you said, you lose the human. They're human. They have families. Some of them have kids. Some of them, you know, have boyfriends and husbands and wives. It's like, they're people. And all I know is anyone is beatable at any day, at any time. And so I think if we just put our best foot forward and also see them as humans, and it's okay if we beat them, and it's okay if they beat us. The relationships for me are the biggest takeaway. And so many athletes miss out on good relationships and good networking that can help you in the future. Never burn a bridge. And that's with an ex-coach, an ex-agent, an ex-teammate. It just isn't worth it, because you never know. Track is a good karma teacher. Track and field is a good karma. I remember beating people who could just fly by me today, and I'd be like, wait a minute, what happened to you? And it teaches you such good lessons. It teaches you such good lessons to be like, look, nothing is promised. Your time is coming, or maybe it already passed, but nothing stays the same. And you can look at time and time again, sheets of track and field pages where the people who are winning medals now used to be in the back. Usain Bolt lost many races before he was Usain Bolt. So I think that there's just always time to be like, look, it's about the relationships. It's about the people. You got to just enjoy the journey. And you're just like a kid putting your hands up in a roller coaster, and you may have it today and you may lose it tomorrow.
That's so good. That's so good. And I think too, how you speak and what you're telling us here is very refreshing, because I think a lot of us as runners can self-isolate. And a lot of what you're talking about, what your framework that you're laying down, is this community aspect, and, you know, we're talking about humans, like we're surrounded by other amazing human beings that, sure, they're our competitor one moment, but they might be our best friend the next. They're people that we share this earth with. And I do think that we self-rely quite a bit. And you're talking about, like, branching out, having a sports psychologist, being vulnerable with your coach. That is very hard to do. So these are great lessons, Kendra. We super appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you.
And so just reflecting then on there's times when it's harder and times when it's easier, in a sense, to thrive. And this is always going to be true. As long as we're human, this is always going to be true. And so for most of us, it seems like the moments of the valleys are some of those hardest times. But I have found, as I've talked with not just runners, people in general, but sometimes that is also true at the peaks, the highest of successes. In some ways, it's almost easier to be all consumed with the thing that made me successful, if that makes sense. What is it that we can do to ensure that when we're not in a healthy space, that we can recognize that to get back to a healthier place as quickly as possible? You've experienced that in different ways as you've been articulating throughout. How do you make sure that you get back to center, or how do you know when you're not there?
Yes, that's good. That's really good. And I think as runners, we all experience that. Like you said, it's like, I've had my highs, and oh my gosh, my agent was thrilled with me and my coach was thrilled with me, but there was nobody by my side when I got last place. So how do how do you figure that out and navigate that? And I really do think the way you go back to center is, again, not only having good relationships with those people. And, I've had coaches that wouldn't talk to me after I didn't win a race. I've had agents who wouldn't talk to me after I won a race. So it's all a learning curve, and you have to be patient. And I hated this when I was fresh and a rookie, but you have to go through the process. And it's so cliche, and I absolutely hate that we have to, but it's like a baby learning how to ride a bicycle. Like, there's only so much you can teach. You just got to experience it to understand it. And to get back to center, though, I think is just like I said, you have to have the right team around you to tell you, hey, like, come back. But also just knowing, again, like, your why, but also, is there a certain thing that changes? So for me, for example, this is a good example. So I went to a different training group, and it was in Philadelphia, and amazing runners there, amazing coach. And for me, I just wasn't happy. And that's okay. Like, that's completely okay. It wasn't anybody's fault. It just happened. And I noticed something, this is like so weird, but my Twitter, I'm not a really big Twitter person. I'm more of an Instagram photo person because I like pictures. But my Twitter, I stopped tweeting, and I stopped tweeting positive affirmations. And when I went to look back, I was like, wait a minute, what, like, that, there's no way. And I literally went back to the day that I moved, and that was the last time that I said something extremely positive about myself and about running. And I'm like, okay, hold on. There's no way. And I looked, and I never, when I was in Philadelphia, I never said anything positive really about running or myself, because I was injured, because I was hurt, and because I wasn't happy. And so I was like, okay, that means I was not centered. I was not, like, something was wrong, and that's okay. Like, I get it. And that happens with moves and different training groups. And like I said, it's a learning curve. But I think when you take the time to really analyze, like, am I doing this to beat somebody? Am I doing this to make money? Or am I doing this because it makes me happy? And if it makes you happy and if it adds quality to your life, then yes, let's keep doing it. Yes, push forward. But when you get to a point where you don't have any hope, you're upset, you're miserable, you're unhappy, it's like you got to just take a step back and be like, okay, I know what I usually do and how I typically am. And we're runners, so we live by, like, routine. So routine is, like, perfect for us. And if I get out of my routine and I'm not reading, and I'm not doing yoga, and I'm not going to church, and I'm not meeting with my Bible study group, and I am not Kendra anymore, then something is wrong. That's the red flag. So always do a self-check-in. And even when you are winning, that's the thing as well. You could be having a great series of races. And I always have a fear of getting like the PR curse, like getting an injury. And I'm like, okay, you just ran really, really well. Maybe you should take a couple days off. Like, also, like, don't get too excited. So it's always like a self-check-in. It's a constant self-check-in. And I mean, I could go to Europe and I could have the best race when I leave, and I could have the best race when I arrive, the plane lands, I have a great race, and when I leave, I have a terrible race. And it's like, how can I navigate that? How can I mentally stay stable through those ups and downs and peaks and valleys and lows? And it's always just a constant like, Kendra, are you okay? Are you happy? Are you good? Can you get through this? And if you can't, then you got to reach out and branch out to your community and your support team. But self-check-in that's the way to get back to center. You always got to make sure yourself is like top notch, doing good. And the rest is based on how well you get through it, on your own, but also with your support team.
Wow. Kendra Chambers masterclass on how to be a thriving runner.
Should we rename this?
You should take this on the road. You should. This is.
Oh, I'm so happy. Thank you.
But seriously, though, just we've all been in these kinds of places, and we need these reminders. We need them because it's so easy to go the wrong direction. And even I think as you're kind of saying it there, like I've got all of these things that are kind of part of what helped me be healthy. And I don't notice, suddenly I'm not doing something for a while, and I don't really notice that, and I can carry on for a bit, and then however far I get down the road and I realize something is wrong, and I can go back and see, like you were saying with it, even something as simple as like on Twitter posting these positive affirmations, and yet that shows me there was something that was off, and it catches up. And
exactly, yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, is there anything else you want to leave our audience with, Kendra?
I'm not sure. I said a lot. I mean, I hope I didn't intimidate anyone. They're probably like, "Oh my gosh."
No,
but
we love it.
Oh, thank you. But really, I just, it took me a long time to get there. And wherever you are on your journey, that's okay. Accept it, embrace it. Like, running is just something that a lot of people don't have the privilege to enjoy. We get to enjoy it and experience it and all the relationships that it comes with. But I think when, we start putting times into our worth, it's just such a slippery slope with that, because you can just get caught up with your performance and your times, and that never equates to who you are as a person. You are valuable. Your life is valuable. Your dreams and your goals outside of running are so meaningful. And I truly believe that everyone is placed on this earth to make a difference. And so whether that's through running or maybe it's through something else, I think we can all appreciate that when we line up together on the line, is that someone's heartbeat is next to us. And we all love running, but at the end of the day, like, it's about the relationships. It's about, feeling happy. It's about quality of life. And that's where your worth comes from.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Kendra.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, it certainly can't be said enough that the whole person part of ourselves, like, we are more than runners. And that is so important, because if I only ever think of myself as just a runner, that's a very fleeting thing. Like when my hamstring bothers me on a 10K time trial and I can't finish the workout, and then I'm bummed for the rest of the day, and then I break my Legos. Started to default to my kids. When they get angry, they break their Legos. Okay, so that's a problem. But I appreciated Kendra's reflection so much, especially thinking about, so like things like self-care. We hear people talking about self-care, and she said that thing about, but you can care for yourself as a runner, but you also need to care for yourself in all of the other capacities. Like, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a various many other things too. But that piece about like what makes me fidelity to the things that help me thrive is so important. And she just mentioned something simple like posting on Twitter. She was posting this regular positive thing on Twitter, and when she stopped doing that, that was a problem. But then also, like, she had her Bible study group, and she had her support groups, and she had her sports psychologist and some of those things. And when I venture away from those things that really truly ground me well, it almost always causes problems. And we see those kinds of things as runners. We see them in our running, and it's so frustrating because it's like, I'm doing all things right with my training, and yet I'm struggling. What's the problem here?
It made me think of this. If you have all of the things in your life and you're growing all of them at the same time, and running falls, you actually can't run anymore, or if it's not enjoyable to anymore, what is it that can pull you back up? Well, it's these things that you've grown alongside of your running, again, as a whole person. And if you want like amazing inspiration, you got to follow Kendra at ms_K Chambers. So at Ms_K Chambers. Don't want to miss it, because you're not only watching her and her road to the Olympic trials, but also getting this inspirational stuff about life.
And don't forget about that Pro Tech discount deal available to you, our audience, exclusively. A2Z, that's ATOZ 10 or 10, and that's good for 10% off Pro Tech's stuff. And then make sure you follow us on AtoZrunning.com and subscribe on YouTube so that you do not miss the wonderful content in store for you, like next week's episode and all you need to know about winter weather running episode. We've got Anna Dalton on, Olympic trials marathoner, and happens to be a resident of Alaska where she lives and trains even in the winter. Yes, she's an expert.
She is, and we're excited to talk to her next week, so make sure you join us.